it would be great if you also describe for the audience like the way.
Okay, sorry. You're right. I think the second question is equally important. Yes.
All right.
Yes, sorry.
All right. So we will start with the second question, and I will give you space as the first one, and then I will give space to Lucie Králová. She also has some images that she will screen while she will describe her work with archival footage, and then I will give space to Tomasz, and then we will continue with the other questions. Sorry, just a small rest of the break.
Gravitation.
So sorry. So, very nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Welcome here, and just could you tell me. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome here at the other program of the conference that is devoted to the topic of ethics in documentary cinema. This will be a discussion panel that focuses on the perspective of filmmakers. So before that, we had an academic panel, and now we will discuss really the practical aspect of working with archival images. We will also focus on how to show how to use documentations of everyday and everydayness, and also such images that comes from the era of totalitarian regimes or revolutionary times. And it's important to discuss from this ethical point of view how to work with the ideology or maybe propagandistic aspects of these images and footage that was made in certain periods of times and that are connected to these periods of times. I have three fantastic guests here. I'm very happy that I can welcome filmmaker Lucie Králová. Lucie is a renowned Czech film director, but also a script editor and lecturer at FAMU. And her films were screened at international film festivals throughout the world and won many awards. And her last film, Capricorn, is an essayistic documentary opera which also works with archival materials, but she used some kind of archival images or footage in three other of her films, and she will be talking about them. Lucia also wrote a brilliant book called Understanding Television, which is a study of power mechanisms influencing Czech public service television's documentary production. The book is in Czech language until now, but I really warmly recommend it to the whole audience. Another of our esteemed guests is Peter Forgacs, Hungarian filmmaker and media artist, sometimes called in the critical discourse as a film alchemist. And he's also a founder of an archive of family and amateur films in Hungary. And he's also one of the most distinguished directors of or creators of found footage films. I can mention his very famous series, Private Hungary, and he works with found footage and archival footage in most of his films and also installations. And I have to admit that one of my absolutely favorite films of his is Wittgenstein Tractatus from 1992. And then I can mention István Bibó Fragments, 2002, or El Perro Negro, Stories from the Spanish Civil War, 2005, or I'm von Hoffler, Variation on Werther from 2008. Peter Forgacs is here with us online from Budapest. And Polish director Tomasz Wolski is here with us as well. He's a director, a scriptwriter and editor, and he studied journalism and documentary filmmaking in Warsaw, and then also a film directing at the famous film school in Łódź. He was part of Berlinale Talents, he's member of a European Film Academy, and his films were screened on international film festivals throughout the world as well. And I can mention, for example, the film An Ordinary Country from 2020, or the film 1970 from 2021. So as you can see, we have filmmakers that I can say that each of them is a unique, creative author personality with unique directorial and creative approach to documentary cinema and also to the archival footage. So I'm very excited to discuss the questions with them. And let's start thinking about all three directors, please. When you need particular images, do you judge these images also according to the source and according to what kind of film was the source, what kind of film was it during its period of origin? For example, the films connected with the political regime, especially in, communist regime in our countries, if it was a propagandistic film. So if you find and want to use such an archive, do you elaborate on the ways of how to comment on the origin of the material? So, Lucia, do you want to start? Should Peter start? Yeah. Oh, okay, so Peter Forgacs will start. Peter, can you start, please?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you. I'm really greatly honored to be part again of Ji.hlava Festival. And I think it's extraordinarily important to talk about these issues. But concerning your question, I think it's completely neutral, the source. Completely neutral, whether it's home movie, political propaganda, or fiction film. That doesn't count at all. What counts is you have to have a good license agreement with the source, whether it's Nazi or Eskimo or home movie or trash film. So the point is that the recontextualizing, rearranging, attribution of meaning in the film that we do, that's much more important than talk about who did it if you have a good legal connection to use the film whenever. So it is the artistic context that answer your question. None. Not interesting where it comes from.
Thank you. Later I will ask you about your strategies of the recontextualization that can somehow shift the maybe original ideology of the images.
So let me be very short on that.
Yes.
The new meaning that I'm trying to create with integrating different source materials is my artistic aim and nothing to do with any other concern. If you talk about ethical, of course, if ethics is extremely important, but we are in a times when, for example, in my pseudo-fascist government is talking, the head of the government, Prime Minister Orban, is talking with Putin. He was so afraid to call the war. So the meaning of the war is the word it's not in the correct place. So we are in an Orwellian world where you can't call, if you meet the Russian dictator, war. So it's Orwell, where the Ministry of War is the Ministry of Peace. So Putin contextualized with Orban the word war. And that's the same procedure what we artists are doing. We are transferring the original footage to a different meaning in the collage, in the system, and it doesn't require to say with each footage that it's from here or it's from there. It's enough to have it in the credits. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Now I'd like to give space to Lucia. So Lucia, if you want to either answer directly to the question or react on what Peter said and also elaborate on your own work with the archives.
For me, it depends if it's found footage, that it's kind of coincidence that I somehow discovered. So it creates for me a completely different artistic context than, for example, if it's kind of instrumental movies, you need to create something editing film from it, which I also made. So if it's this situation of finding a treasure, I'm in the situation of kind of archaeologist, and I would like to communicate this situation to the viewer as well, to know that this is just a trace, this is just kind of legacy we need to understand, and some way to code it. And in my way of understanding this, it's part of the film usually. So for me, it's important to communicate not in informative perspective, but in creative way, that I'm not the one who knows everything, but I try to understand what does it mean to find a specific archive in 2023. If there are some hidden parts as well in the story I can create from it, I would like to admit it and to communicate as well.
So it means that this approach that you described is the same or very similar with when you are working with the footage that comes from recent days, or when you are working with the images that you know that are that carries some weight of the ideology originally. So is it the same approach as you now said?
I think for me it's important to make conscious the process of how I understand it, how this understanding it's created actually. This is the way I want to communicate, to make this process-based approach. Because, for example, in my last film, Copper Code, it's personal-based, family archive of an ambiguous figure, composer who was propaganda author, and he was completely deleted from the official memory. And the only thing what he left behind was these 8mm personal films with no connection actually to the story. So to understand, without judging the person, was very important task to make the story. So it was some step before we start actually to make this film. We started this research to recreate the story, including the missing parts in other archives, etc. So
I see. Maybe we will continue with Tomasz. Tomasz, if you can comment on this, if you judge the source according to the period of its origins when you are deciding what images you use and how to use them.
Well, I think I completely don't care about the source, what the footage comes from. The most important question for me is what the reason and how to use them, and what I do with such archives. It's the question. I think that I asked myself from the beginning my experience with archives. It's I want to do historical films that then you have to be strict with the facts, or either I want to make found footage films that is more creative. So in that terms, I always say that I'm not making historical films, because there's so much creative things I'm doing with the footage, and I don't care about the sources. I don't care about sometimes about the facts. It's so I just use them the way I wanted, and my story starts with the source of the archive that a lot of Polish filmmakers didn't want to go in and to dig there, because it's an institute of national remembrance. It's it's not famous. I mean, it's famous, but very negative in a negative way, because it's very right-wing, people who are holding this institute right now, and a lot of right-wing reporters and TV journalists comes there and use the archives, because this archive collects the archives from the communist times and the war times, and they are using this to prove something. So they're using some kind of propaganda.
Is it Pilecki?
No, it's not Pilecki. Pilecki is another institute, also right wing.
Then please name it. Then
yes, I did it. It's IPN. It's a Institute of National Remembrance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the right-wing journalists, or even let's call them directors, documentary directors, they're using this propagandas and Secret Service footage to make another propaganda. So it's not. That's why the Polish filmmakers are avoiding this place. And I went there, and I found so much treasure when you do not think about this propaganda, but when you think about this footage as a documentary footage, even if it was shot by Secret Service officers. So I didn't care at all that they did it. I treat these guys as documentary makers, and I use the footage, what they achieved, what they shot.
Lucia,
can I just briefly react on the sentence that you are using it? This maybe I wanted to stress that what does it mean to communicate the situation that I'm using, for example, somebody's like personal archive. Who am I to interpret his life? Because you have really a big power as a filmmaker, to how to create this interpretation, and if the roots and the inspiration and understanding of what the interpretation could be, you would like somehow to communicate or not. That's how I was understand the question.
I'm not communicating with the sources at all. I try to make another meaning to the sources. That's my job, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, may I have a word? I agree with Ludmila, because it is very important to give respect for the private family and don't work against them. It's their interest or their feelings. So it is not a bad compromise if you listen to them about their interpretation and make something that is acceptable by them. But of course, it's very important to keep our independent view on the footage with the respect of the private film owner.
All right. Now, I will diverge from our pre-planned structure of the discussion, because you opened very important issues. So I would follow up on what Lucia said and what Peter then commented. Because Peter, you use family archives very widely. Lucia also uses family archives, but you are the one who makes some of the films solely from the family archives. And now you said that it's important to respect the people who are represented in this footage. This was my question on you, which I really consider important. Because when I compare different approaches to work with family archives, we can see, for example, here in Czech Republic, we have a director, Jan Schickel. He made a series, Private Century, and he worked with the archives in the way that he gathered the families together, he screened them, the footage, and he led them to comment who is who, what are these situations that are in the footage, and then he constructed the commentary, the voiceover for the film, and the family archives are used more in an illustrative way to the stories that were constructed according to the oral history talkings with the people who are on the footage. Your work, Peter, is completely different, and you use the images from the family archives more, I would say, maybe associatively or more freely. And you are not constructing some precise narratives that would show certain situations that happen to that family, but your topics are much more abstract, and you use these family archives to somehow communicate these more abstract topics. So my question is, okay, so please correct me or elaborate on this process of yours, how this type of your work corresponds with respect to the people that are represented in this family footage.
I made a lot of films in a wide spectrum, from very almost pedagogical family archive opening and to philosophical temptations. So I think both of my colleagues, Lucie and Tomasz, are doing the same, and I think it's obvious that what I said, if you're legally right with the family and don't hurt them, you can mix everything with anything. If you have a clear, creative art form, whether it's called documentary or fictionalized home movie. So what I say is the ethics start with agreements, legal agreements, good interviews with the family, and you can use it like Jan Schickel, Honza, who is a great filmmaker, and he also made several different genres. So let's not talk about the options of what genre we are approaching with the film, because we can be eclectical, we can be clean and minimalist, but it's always the same. We are doing something what did not exist earlier. So this recontextualizing, attribution of meaning, what we do through of art of filmmaking is a wide spectrum. We are not administrators of family history. When we are the archivists and archaeologists. But we have to separate these two things, and we have our motivation to reread, reconstruct something that didn't exist earlier. So it's a collage work, and therefore what we do, even if it's from a Nazi source or a Soviet source or home movie source or secret police source or CCTV source, our job is to make something that is conveying and telling the story as we would like to influence the discourse. And it has several layers all the time, and full stop. Thank you.
Fantastically said. Thank you very much. It was very, very clear, and thank you. That was an excellent insight in your thinking about working with this kind of footage. Now I would give the word to Lucie. Tomasz, please, a little bit patience. Now I would like, because Peter now introduced quite extensively his thinking, especially with the connection to the family archives. And now, Lucie, could you please elaborate more on your method of how to work with different kind of archival footage, and we also have some photographies that can be screened.
Maybe I would like to react as well. I hope it will be both.
First react, please.
Because it's quite interesting if you have the situation of the archive, people on archive who are like that, all of them, and you cannot ask anybody, and you would like to create a story about a character who left behind the footage, which is my character Jan Kapper, the composer I mentioned, the propaganda composer who completely like transformed from propaganda to avant-garde band author, completely deleted from official memory during communism. So it's my approach was kind of a really weird attempt to invite this passed away author to collaborate somehow, to be a co-author, because I'm totally like fascinated of the film medium, that it's preserving the dead people and like keeping them alive. So that's why I was speaking about coding, and that's why speaking about the form, I think the roots of the form could be connected with this coding of the archive. So I made a film about a music composer, and it's a very compositional film. It's a life as a composition, because our life is a kind of a specific composition. So this composer left behind 8mm silent films, and through the film we enabled him to put the sound, his music, to the film. But it's not the end of the story. We recreate like the whole narrative of his film from the like biography, kind of biography, but there were so many missing parts which we do not know how to interpret them, because he came through very deep transformation on political, personal, and creative level. So how to communicate this, and also with the music. So we recreate libretto based on the archives, also political and personal letters and his personal notes, etc. And then we invited the choir, 17 great singers, to create a new layer of music, and they were like singing the story, which was connected with this, like fully his personal archive material. So it was a strange process, and part of this process was like behind the scenes layer, which is also part of the film. So it's quite complicated for explanation, but Jan Kapper was author of the method of coding in music. So that's why the name of the film is Kapper Code, because we are not only archaeologists, but also the ones who are coding this legacy. So I think it's very important that we are in 2023 or in nowadays, so this possibility and like artistic freedom to like recontextualize archive, it's important, but I wanted really to be very organic. What Jan Kapper would say, he was very playful, and you could somehow to code how the film, what kind of film he would like. So that was kind of this attempt.
And do you want to continue with elaborating on your process with the illustrative photographies, or
I think we can pass maybe to you, because then I can be more specific.
So Tomasz, you said that no like license agreement are important for you.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that about the source. No, I mean because
source.
No,
yes.
just
I'm sorry. Thank you for
the difference
correcting.
between our films, what I understand, and is that it's completely different when you deal with private, footage from the person you collect this, and it's completely different when you have the footage that I work with, like they are shot by Polish television and Polish Secret Service officers. From today's perspective, you can say they did it somehow a little bit illegally, because their work wasn't legal. So it's completely different perspective, and I cannot ask these officers, because they won't say we shot this, because it's they wouldn't be proud of this. We don't know the people who they shot, and of course I had the situation that I knew that from some kind of ethical reason I cannot show something, because it was too hard, too harsh, or too intimate to do it. Or sometimes I use some kind of materials and like with an ordinary country, there are, for example, some footage that I found amazing sound, interrogation, for example, and I didn't have any film footage, so I recreate this footage as it was shot by secret officers that time, and it was because this interrogation by militia, the secret service officers, even if I would found this footage, I wouldn't use it. Because then you could see, because that was like a private, like they cut some guy who had this like some kind of affair with a woman, and they use it to to persuade him to collaborate with a secret service. So if there was such a footage with the film, I wouldn't use it, because this guy could have the problem, or I wouldn't like to show him that he had an affair and he cheated his wife, whatever. So. There are limitations, but a different limitation.
So, and is the limitation connected to what also Lucia mentioned, that it is different if the footage represents people who are not alive anymore, or if there are people who are still alive and can see themselves in the footage, right?
Yeah, but if there are footage about, let's call them unordinary people that were shot on street, you don't know if they are alive or if you are making film about some famous people. Now I'm working on a film almost finished about one of the famous spy during the World War II. It's 95% archive film, and I contact the people who shot this, and even thought that I will use some kind of interviews with them, but then I said no. But I contacted them and I showed them the film, because it's based on some kind of footage that was confiscated by secret service officers in 1972 in Poland. That was a French TV crew that came to Poland to shoot something, and it was taken from them. I didn't have it back, so after 40 years I just brought them and to show this footage, and they were so surprised. So I knew that they are alive. I mean, unfortunately no, because one of the last one died a month ago. He was 86. But I managed to meet him and to talk, and so yeah. But I knew that he was alive, so it was possible. Yes. But with the people shot on the streets, even you do not you can't recognize them clearly. It's not possible.
Of course, sure. Now I'm turning to the audience. If any of you have some remarks or some questions on our filmmakers, our panelists, yes, please, madam.
This question, thank you so much. This is fast microphone, please.
Please wait for the microphone, because it's being translated.
Thank you so much. This is a fascinating discussion. This question is for three of you. How comfortable are you that you know about the power that you have as a filmmaker?
So, Peter, do you want to start?
I feel myself as I would be in an archival film right now. We are the past. We are living in our political, familial, cultural bubbles. And the internet, the AI is completely changing the filmmaker and the filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, genre and context. So privacy is over with Facebook and these chit-chats. The intelligence services are looking at us all the time. The CCTV is everywhere. The archives are online. So what are we talking about? The biggest danger is that artificial intelligence will be so effective in 10 years that they will able to create artificially documentary films as if would they have been made in 1939 or in 1967. So the publicity, the bubbles, the communication through this genre is in museum now. So the biggest danger is not our ethical concerns or archives, but what will reach out the public. So my problem is, however I am ethical, the times, the attribution of meaning, we are lost in translation. We are completely lost in translation. It's very difficult to translate poetry. It's very easy to understand moving images. We read in 1 second, but how we contextualize can be as ethical as we want. But the world is moving very, very fast to the hands of manipulators. The big factories like Google, Twitter, Facebook are changing completely our vision of ourselves and our community. So I think a little bit this is awkward if we don't see what is happening beyond this bubble. Thank you.
So now, Lucie wanted to react.
I think if I will follow this, so just because of this, I think it's very precious to concentrate of how the meaning is created and how our interpretation as the filmmakers who has this power of interpretation. Because of all that, I think we can concentrate also with the case study of this analog world, for example, to communicate how the meaning of, for example, someone's ambiguous story under the political regime, who was like dictator's regime, is created. What does it mean and how to understand this, how to code this? And I think it's, again, for me, it's on the table, this question, all the time, and it's not something done, because the meaning is creating in the process. And so for me, with this film, I mentioned it was really like 5 years long process in which we wanted really to admit also what is possible to communicate, and if our need as a filmmakers, for example, to create a story of someone's life is relevant or not, because maybe this need of make this dramatical arc is something special, because for example, this hero I'm speaking about, his life, when we like rewrite it based on this digging in archives, it was like from a screenwriting manual, like from a fiction film. But our task was, would we really like to make this strong story, strong dramatical arc in that, or would we like to show the story as well, and also to admit the missing parts, and to communicate this reflexivity, who we really are, to judge him, to how we can understand him just only from the traces he left behind. What does it mean? So I think this question, what does it mean to make a portrait? What does it mean to make a biography of somebody? How to like establish the meaning? I think it's, for me, it's important if it's part of the whole work.
Mm-hmm. Tomasz, would you react on this question of power?
Yeah, you
of
ask how do I, if I am aware of how much power do I have, if I could count from 0 to 100, I would say maybe 1, because let's be realistic. We are making how many people are interested in documentaries. Of course, we are on the festival. It gathers some audience, but you know, if you are not making film for Netflix with a typical, let's call it American style, your audience is very limited. So we are hobbyists, and making for some crazy people who are really interested in our work, and that's great. I mean, because that's why we are going to the cinema to meet the people who understand us, who try to say something that we understand. To meet the people we are connected somehow. And maybe it's a limited amount, and it's fine. I accept this, that you know there won't be millions of spectators of my film. There will be hundreds, sometimes thousands. Well, I have one film that was broadcasted on TV. It was 1.5 million, so it was quite a lot, but that was an accident. Because they broadcast this on Sunday at 8 p.m. Crazy people in documentary that time. But this was very interesting what Peter said about AI. I think, of course, it's dangerous, but I think that we somehow have to find a way to work with it, to use it, because I have a feeling that we missed something in terms of archives, because when I think about the archives, I use some archives and I edit archives from the World War II, before the war, after the war, communistic time. But then, I mean, I'm talking about the Polish situation. When I look at the archives in TV, Polish TV, it's total crap. You cannot build anything out of this from 90s to today, because they are just shooting, you know, some very short shots. And you cannot build anything almost with this, because there's this. We somehow stop to archive our reality, to shoot our reality, but not with the one shot, but you know, to go deeply and to spend some time. We do not have time because we have to rush, and there are no archive. I think not much archive from 90s to today.
Did you intend to add something?
Thank you. So may I rephrase the question and break it down? For that question, the first question actually, do you think that you have power as a filmmaker? That's the first question. And then, based on what my understanding about the response, it seems to me that Thomas thinks that filmmakers does not carry on any power. But in this case, I will argue that whatever position it is, the AI, when you mention about how the AI come in, AI is the collective resources, collective information. And when we mention about collective, everyone's voice is part of it. So I want to back to that question, rephrase, that what is, do you think that as a filmmaker you have a power? And the second question is how comfortable that you have or you feel in that position.
I think that partly we were already talking about the question of the power, really, although it was elaborated into the different aspects and perspectives. But I'm turning on to Peter. If you want to add something, Lucia, Tomasz, please add something to this issue.
I completely agree with Tomasz. I think that we don't have more power than T.S. Eliot, the poet. We don't have more power than poetry. And who has power? Well, festivals, television stations, film companies, distributors, etc. We are nothing. We are lucky participants in case we can raise money, we can finance the film. But the big point is distribution. And that's why I mentioned the internet. The television slots are completely changing. Hungary is a proto-fascist country where good filmmakers are banned now from the market, from distribution. Just take wonderful film that won in Explanation for Everything in Venice Biennale and now in Chicago. It was filmed from pocket. And who has the power? Okay, it went out, but documentary film is only accepted now and run by festivals and smaller communities. So I don't have any more power than a poet. That's my answer to your question, because we have to see the whole thing, the industry, the distribution, the television channels, how television has changed radically in the last 25, 30 years, completely all over the world. In Europe, where cultural televisions have good tradition, in the United States, they have zero, for example. And that's all the question. The power, of course, even one poet, one poem can be a great power, but it's a spiritual power and not power over the film as a whole. Sorry, maybe I'm too pessimistic, but this is what I think.
Okay, so maybe some last remarks to these questions of power, because we somehow diverted the topic to the question of the infrastructure and of the different kinds of power, of the discursive power versus the power of impact and outreach. So maybe some last remarks from the two of you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, I understand the gatekeepers are crucial, but thinking about the power, like the power of the poet, I think, for example, in this specific case of my film, where there is no interpretation of the life story of this gentleman, the film I created would be very important interpretational tool, how to understand who he was, you know, and I think this is kind of a power I feel like responsibility to have for. So I'm thinking about this somehow, that it's really fragile in a way. And of course, it's speaking about this context, it's funny, you know, I completely agree. We are like totally like minority voice, but somehow it's conserved and you are making like another archive in this way.
I would just add that I would try to understand as a power for what, actually, because for power to change audience, no, it's not possible. I mean, film cannot change. I mean, you can feel something. It's my opinion. You can feel something through 90 minutes, and then you go out for the cinema, and you go to your kids, and you take care of your stuff, and maybe it's still remains you for 50, 40 minutes, or maybe one day, and then you watch another film and you forget about this. You don't even remember the title. And the power for archiving, to shoot something, to keep safe, that it will be recorded. Yes, of course. I mean, we are shooting films, and it stays. It's done. You can find it. You can watch it online on a festival. But there are thousands of films right now. We are competing with YouTube, Vimeo, Netflix, HBO. No power, and only power is, like, I will say that the internet, because it's nothing negative. It's because of internet. I watched Explanation for Everything, and it's a beautiful film. I recommend you.
Michael Renov has a question, please.
Well, it's not really a question, but it's a bit of a response to the kind of slightly pessimistic tinge that the conversation has taken. I want to speak from the point of view of someone who studies the kind of work that you guys do, and also who sees its impact in a classroom. And I'm here to tell you that the ripple effects are things that you may not be aware of, but can really have a lot of impact. And I prefer impact to power. About 35 years ago, a video artist from the US called Sherry Milner wrote an essay, and it was called "All That Glitters Is Not Gold." And essentially what she was arguing for was qualitative over quantitative. We live in an era that's so quantified, and that's why streamers don't want to tell you how many people are watching, because they may have to pay somebody an extra nickel or dime. But the qualitative impact sometimes can be longer lasting, and it's kind of unpredictable. And I'm going to speak directly to Peter because, you know, I've been showing some of his work for many years, and some of my students have gone on to themselves go out into the academic world, and there's like generations of them by now. And every so often I get an email from someone who will say, "Hey, Michael, can you tell me where I can find the Maelstrom? Because I want to show it in my class." And of course I have to tell them, well, that's difficult because there are rights questions to it. But here's the point, is they saw that film in a classroom 25 years ago, and they want to pass it on to the next generation. So I just think you shouldn't take the short view. It's like, you know, chaos theory. The butterfly wings can have an impact.
Yeah.
Perfect remark. Thank you. Thank you so much for offering this perspective. The last question from my side will go back to work with archival footage. And my question is about appropriation and about the different ways of how you can appropriate, or maybe I can even use the word manipulate, but I don't mean it in a bad way, manipulate the footage that you have. So you have an archive material, and you can, for example, you can use a different color, you can reframe it, you can change the frame rate, you can, I don't know, you can, there are so many, you can use some digital tools to change the visuality, you can use certain compression algorithms to change the visuality of the image. You can connect it with very different sound design or very different music. You have really many possibilities of how to make the archival footage more like yours, and in order to use it in your film. And also, Peter, you also in your films, you, for example, use these like different tones and different colors of the shots, or sometimes you just point out some detail from the image, or you change the frame rate. Lucia, you are also working with these archival footages in a way to make it like creatively more corresponding with the film you use it in. So could you please comment on this, how you decide in what ways you change, you manipulate, again, not in a bad way, I don't mean it in a pejorative way, how you appropriate this archival footage for the purposes of using it in your film. Peter.
Well, the word manipulation is also very positive. Just think of Méliès, the great French filmmaker. So he was manipulating from the first moment, and the first silent films were hand-painted. So it is part of the graphic, the filmic, the photographic, the painting, collage technique. So it's not negative. The second thing is that this appropriation is a natural gesture and technique of creating something new. The third thing, from 2, 1 plus 1 is not 2, it can be the third one. And that's the famous collage and editing technique of let's say, Eisenstein or Griffith or the modern film or Abel Gance. So what we're doing is poetry, everything is allowed, and then we are presenting our work to our judges, our audiences, and thank you, Michael, reminding that there is the classroom and there is always a small stream, and what we're doing is a fluency of our palette. So when I started to work with found footage, family found footage, I was a very conservative in the sense that talk from the film and not illustrate something. So what we are doing is with many tools of film and visual and sound and music, and it is not illustrating the idea, but telling something what is the idea. And that's why everything is allowed.
I understand, but please let me follow up with a question. If we are looking at this process of appropriation from the ethical point of view, are there any boundaries? Is there some limit? Is there something you would never do with the archival footage because of some ethical restrictions?
Yes, I would never make a fascist film, and I will use films with copyright, with good contracts with the film owner, with the archive. That's the only limit. Don't make fascist film and don't lie. Puff.
Perfect.
Everything is open.
Perfect. Thank you. Lucia, your comment on appropriation and different methods of it?
I think editing is total like essential tools, and I feel like 2 layers in editing. One is control, whatever, like creative control, for example, the creating the story, etc. And then there is this chaos quality in it, something what's happening like by chance. For example, you just touch the button of this editing program and something is happening and there is some kind of connection. And now we are discussing if we will keep it or not. Usually we keep it somehow because it's such a strange coincidence for me, for example, to start a film that somebody asked me that there is this found footage, and it's not that usually my intention, but somehow it reveals in my life. So I try to understand where is my position in it and what I can do. So this dynamics between this control and chaos, for me it's like most fascinating on this process. I'm not sure that we are really like 100% know what we are doing, what we are really creating, but it lives on its own later. And I'm very focused on like visual metaphors, which you can somehow interpret which are not intentionally made in this original meaning, but you can like recreate the meaning, and so that's.
And is there some limit for you? Is there something you would never do with the archival footage in a way of manipulation or appropriation or ways of recontextualization?
It's a very general question, but we focus on creating story of somebody. So, for example, back to this composer, for example, he had a son, and he put this son when he was young, really young, to an institution. He actually abandoned him, and we had not so many information what did it mean? What did it mean in that time? So it was very, very limited how to communicate this gesture this situation in life of somebody. Or of course he served the regime and then he tried to completely like change. So the energy of understanding what he could thought at the time and the impossibility actually really to access his head and to admit that we are in this situation. So for me, the honest approach is really to try to understand as much as possible. Then on the other hand, to like help your like creative freedom, and it's a very complex process. So I think the complexity of it is the best I can do as an author.
I understand. Tomasz, if you can comment on the your strategies of possible appropriation and maybe where you see the limits.
Well, you know, it's how you call it, manipulation. It starts with just from the beginning of work with the archive on the editing room. It's like you combine two shots that are not meant to be together. That's it. That starts there, and then you mentioned the other tools you can use, or you don't have to. You can slow down. You can reframe. You can add colors. It depends. It depends on what you need and what you want to achieve. But I think that for me the main tools to manipulate. Because it is somehow manipulation, of course. It's somehow we are building our words somehow. So we are trying to convince audience that what they see is true, but it's not true at all, even with the archives or documentaries. But it's for me, main tools are editing. Just when I improvise with the footage. I don't have any. I have a basic idea, but I try to try different things and to find what is working, and sound. Because when you add sound, this is amazing. Because I made some kind of test with like a ordinary guy who's not interested in documentary, because he said that when he was watching the archives that was colorized, the black and white footage that was colorized, said, "Oh, it was so real." And it's not natural, I said, but I will show you what can be more real. And I show him the footage without sound, like the original one, and then with the sound that was built from the scratch. And he was amazed because it brings you the sound of all these follies that we are building, the atmosphere. It brings you completely to this space what we are showing. It adds so much reality, and that's the basic tools I use. And if you're asking about limits, no limits except of course what Peter said. And I would never do any propaganda film. Because I'm a documentary maker. Yes, I want to tell universal stories, not to to convince you of something. I want to feel you or to see something. I have no answers. I can just ask the questions.
I understand, Lucie, you wanted to comment.
It just came on my mind that when I tried to code this material, and I was thinking just about your question. I figured out a way which helped me to understand, for example, 8 hours of a material, and it was that we measured the singular like motifs in the material, because there were some common motifs what Jan Kapr did, what he captured. And of course, for one motif, it was like his daughter, but for example, some animals and then swimming, several motifs. And through the lens, we could make also some kind of understanding, and we admit that to the viewer. So the viewer can also has an idea of the whole entire material we were worked with. So that's maybe the strategy I really like to work with, and I discovered for me in this film.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very interesting. Peter, do you want to follow up on your colleagues with some final remark, or will we wrap up?
I think I've said everything, and my colleagues know everything what I know, and we are poets, practitioners, we are ethical, and everything is open and free for appropriation, recontextualizing, and serving attribution of meaning in a form that is born on the editing table, in the studio, in our mind. So no limits, just it's very hard to talk for us, to send a message for us beyond the bubble of festivals, beyond the bubble of schools, but we are not stopped by that. So appropriation is, since the Greek statues have been multiplied by the Roman workshops, and they're as nice as the original. It's just technology. So the content is more important. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Czech director Lucie Králová, Hungarian director Peter Forgacs, and Polish director Tomasz Wolski. And thank you to the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Following up what was said, I would like to invite you to a retrospective section of Georges Méliès and his brother. We have a very unique documentary films that these brother Mélièses made, and they were not presented in Czech Republic yet. And then I would also like to invite you to the program that is called Cinema and Artificial Intelligence. We have two programs where you can see how artificial intelligence is overlapping with the documentary film. Okay, goodbye.
And we are not, this is not the end of the conference. We have closing discussion in 15 minutes. Vrče se jde s tím rozloučit. Vem si, prosím, že se tady nikam neskulí.